Awesome. Well, let's get started. I have an amazing group of panelists here today to help us walk through transforming field marketing to account-based plays. We all know this has kind of been really top of mind for everyone, where we're struggling to figure out, what do we do with all those amazing field events we had that were building pipeline for us, whether they were virtual events, one of our networking dinners, or one-on-one executive briefings that we can no longer do. How are we transitioning those teams to still building pipeline, to still helping move business in the situation that we're in today? And future crystal ball kind of indicates that this may be a situation that's with us for a while. So more importantly than just even in the next few months, but how are we kind of transitioning our thinking all the way around to still adding value for that customer, building that trust and credibility with our prospects, but not face to face. So my name is Sherry Johnston. I lead the account-based practice here at Winning by Design and have some panelists with me that I'll introduce in just a second as well. A little housekeeping. We are using the chat feature and would love to hear from you and keep this as interactive as possible. So please go ahead and put your questions or hot topics or comments in the chat. We would love to make this as useful and relevant as possible to what's top of mind for you. And also, just as we're going through this, we're going to share a variety of topics. But what we want to make sure you walk away with is after the session, we will be sharing both a summary of some of the play designs that our panelists have shared with us that are working for them, as well as some of the tactics to really make account-based plays and non-event engagements as successful as possible, and getting creative with it. So with that, I first want to introduce Megan French, who is also an architect on our team.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, hi, everyone. My name is Megan French. I am an account-based strategy architect at Winning by Design, and just started a couple of months ago. And prior to that, I was working on a lot of ABS projects with clients, and so far it's been great. And I've learned a lot, even in the short time, that I'm excited to share with you today.
Excellent. Brona.
Hi there, Brona O'Connor here, Director of Demand Gen at Allocadia. We're a spend management platform for marketers based in Vancouver, Canada. I've been at Allocadia coming up on 4 years now, and I lead the Demand Gen team, covering everything from what was our events to direct mail to webinars to all our ABM plays, so everything that helps drive demand for our company. And before that, I was actually in legal marketing for 5 years, so a bit of a diverse background.
Great, thank you so much for joining us. And Brianna.
Hi, I'm Brianna Haig. I am based in San Francisco working at Hired, which is a career marketplace that matches tech talent with really great jobs. And I've been at Hired for almost 2 years now. I'm the current director of account-based marketing. My role was previously focused on events and field marketing, and now we've taken more of an account-based approach, working closely with Sherry and the Winning by Design team as we refined our strategy. And yeah, excited to be here.
Excellent. And we're all pretty new to kind of writing this playbook of transitioning teams as we go. So I think we'll have some unique perspectives of Megan and I having a perspective of how we're working broadly with clients, and Brianna and Brona having really in it and all the details around how they're really transitioning. And I know you guys have some really interesting and creative ways you've migrated your team. So let's dive in. Before we dive in, just kind of taking note that this time is really interesting and challenging for us all. And in our briefing conversations, it's been fun to hear how some people have adopted new creative hobbies in this time that we're all sheltering in place. And maybe each of you can share one of your interesting hobbies that hopefully you'll adopt long term. Brona, do you have one in mind?
Yeah, so I guess I'm a avid, Shari will know this, I'm an avid Soul Cycle fan, missing it dearly, but I must say I'm one of those people that's fallen victim to the working out from home. I'm a new fanatic of it. I find that it helps me separate my day between my work day and my evening day and not such a huge space. So yeah, I've been taking advantage of every Zoom bar class I can find and Instagram live workouts. So yeah, I'm all in. I'm gonna be fitter than ever when I come out of this quarantine period.
Well, that's a healthy one to adopt for sure. Wish that was my case. How about you, Brianna?
I'll actually double down on that. I have a tragic story. On like the very beginning of lockdown, got a Peloton bike, and it's sitting right here in my studio apartment, and it broke within 1 week. So I've made a concerted effort to make sure that I'm still, being active, and I'm walking a lot, and, doing at home workouts and literally all of the things to make up for the fact that my Peloton is sitting here staring at me and it's unable to get fixed right now. But I shared my referral code with a bunch of my friends, and 15 of my friends bought bikes using my code. So I have all of the Peloton apparel from my credits that they've given me.
That is hilarious. Yeah, we're gonna now be Google searchable on like Peloton reviews for this video. Be very confusing. All right, Megan, how about you?
Yeah, so I moved to Portland a couple of years ago, Portland, Oregon, from San Francisco. And recently, with the lockdown and everything, I've been doing Zoom calls with my old friends from San Francisco, many of whom have, moved across the country. And these are people that we haven't all been in one room together for maybe like the last 5 years. And so it's just been like an amazing silver lining of the shelter in place that I get to connect regularly with some old friends. So I would recommend doing that.
Excellent. So setting the stage for us, I know this situation has affected every company quite differently. So would love to hear, Brona and Brianna, what on a scale of 1 to 10, how severely has this impacted your business? And maybe you can just give us a quick overview of kind of the situation of, who you're selling into and how it's affected you. Brona, you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess if we see the scale as from kind of 10 being severely impacted, I'd probably say we're about a 5. I'm going to say kind of somewhat impacted. I think it still remains to be seen, especially in the quarters ahead. We're going to really see the long-term impacts of what's happening here. But for those of you that are not aware, Allocadia is a spend management platform for marketers. So we were actually quite fortunate in the sense that a lot of marketers, in the midst of the chaos that erupted, were looking at their spend and what's committed and what hasn't been planned yet, so that they could reallocate their resources to the next best action, whatever that was. So our customers have really been benefiting from that. And so far, we're really adjusting our own marketing resources to supporting our customers even more during that process as well as getting, a decent amount of net new interest as well. So realistically, though, I think we're very much tentatively keeping an eye on where the market's going. And for us, we sell into marketing operations and CMOs, and we're finding that a lot of that decision-making by authority is going up to the CMO level. So that's helping us augment our story as well for a CMO, and why it's really important to have that visibility. So far it's okay, but I'd say definitely in that kind of 5 range, somewhat, and that may fluctuate with time.
That's really interesting. I hear that across the board of really one that I didn't expect, of really having to adjust the personas that you're selling into nowadays. To your point, either hire, or a lot of my customers also, the CFO is becoming a much more major stakeholder. So interesting. All right, how about Brianna? You're all yours.
Yeah, it's interesting about personas, because I think we've definitely taken an adjustment as well. I mean, our audience is employers that hire tech talent, and the hiring industry has absolutely been impacted by everything. But there are a lot of companies that are still hiring, And we've been having really interesting conversations and really getting to know our clients and prospects that are at different stages of the spectrum when it comes to what they're doing right now. And so we've been learning a lot, who is currently implementing a hiring freeze, who's having a hiring slowdown, but still moving forward with, building their pipeline for recruiting for tech roles. We have some that are kind of business as usual and still hiring at the same, pace that they were prior to all of this. So we're keeping a really close tab on, where everyone's at that we're in touch with. And for us, for the personas piece of it, a lot of our audience is recruiting and talent acquisition folk, but we're also finding that a lot of people that we're, wanting to do more and have more engagement with are hiring managers. So engineering managers, people that actually lead teams. And so we've been creating content that, we always create content that services both audiences, but we've been trying to do more that is specific for hiring managers. And we just recently released a data report on this. We called it the State of Remote Work Unlocking Opportunity, based off of a survey that we did of our technical candidates that use our platform to find jobs on what's changed for them and what they're looking for in a job opportunity and how remote kind of plays into that. And so we found a really interesting opportunity for us from a content perspective to kind of lean into remote work and what that looks like, and some of the interesting data that we have that we've always had based off of our marketplace and the people that find jobs on our platform. But the really interesting shift that we've all taken and what that looks like for the future of work.
That's excellent. Interesting. How about specifically, Brona, on your end? Tell us a little bit about what your field marketing strategy looked like pre-COVID, and what types of events that you were doing that you're having to adapt away from.
Yeah, for sure. So for us, we have a very busy spring trade show season. It was going to be our first time exhibiting at the Adobe Summit. Other events that we were on the bill were Serious Decisions Summit, MarTech. We'll also be at Workfront Leap. So we had a busy quarter ahead. Our Q4 is usually our busiest time. And as we start to see the news unfold, it started to become very apparent that was going to change. And we had to really adjust on what we were going to do. And what we have actually pivoted towards is far more targeted programs, and that's what's working best for us. So we're finding that inbound is a little bit slower now. People are not shopping as much, and they're fighting against budget restrictions, and maybe it's sometimes layoffs as people are no longer in positions anymore. So we're finding a lot more targeted approach programs are getting those conversations going, and now it remains to be seen on if we can escalate it to the right buying authorities. So we've transitioned resources from field into ABM plays, and while also taking advantage of some of the excellent virtual summits that are happening out there too, as they make sense. So we're doing a bit of a mixture from a lead gen perspective with the virtual summits and making sure we can share our great customer stories, but also doing some very targeted plays with a very relevant message. That's what we're really focusing on, those two strategies right now.
Yeah, it's interesting across our customer base and even beyond how people are realizing, just like you mentioned, the pivot of how it's almost necessary to move to account-based, especially early days where, or even now, you don't want to be reaching out to companies who are going through massive layoffs. So being targeted and focused and understanding the customer is kind of key more than ever. So interesting.
And knowing what they're going through, and do you have a relevant message? I think that's critical for us. We really took a look at our message and said, how can we actually help? And are we helping, or are you trying to fit something to help? And we were fortunate. I mean, we relied on our own product as a marketing team to help get visibility into our spend and know where we should be moving money next. But we really took a hard look at ourselves and thought, what's our story? How do we help our marketer community at this time? And making sure that with all the influx of emails and messaging, and how many emails everybody got where they said, oh, have you got extra event spend now? Do you want to do this program or this program? We get so many. So we really wanted to make sure that it was really relevant. Whatever we were sending out there wasn't spray and play at all.
Got it.
Yeah, and I'll just speak to the messaging piece really quickly. I'm finding that clients on the personas, we have more personas in the finance department than we did before, and that the messaging is really pivoting to how does this product or service help free up cash flow? How does it make your business more efficient? And that maybe was not true, pre-COVID situation.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think also kind of to that relevant messaging point, we've been very cognizant on like a daily basis, making sure that everything that we're communicating from a comms perspective is as relevant as it was the week before. I think as things were changing and we kind of started to wrap our heads around exactly what we had in front of us, something that the marketing team had put together, as a lever for communicating about different things that the sales team was leveraging, we had to tweak it a little bit, even a few days after, kind of depending on new information that we were continuing to get. And so I think it's really important just to be really cognizant of that messaging, both from a personalization standpoint, but then also relevancy in that moment, given kind of the crazy dynamic nature of all the information that we're continuing to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's such a good point. More than ever, revisiting your messaging every week is so key. Like we've never had to before, where, now we're kind of transitioning into the potential of reopening and shelter in place and being kind of drawn back a bit. And, how do we consider where people's mindsets are on a week to week basis? Yeah. Interesting though, a lot of our customers, initially we recommended like, just turn off all your automation for now, because until you review it, a lot of the automation that we may have had on for communication just may not be appropriate from a week to week basis. So super good point.
Yeah, we actually did that. We went through our full nurture and took a look at what was relevant and what was going to be sensitive to what the marketer was experienced, but also, is this still valuable today? And if it's not valuable, take it out. Don't like.
Yeah, we've even been reviewing stock photos to make sure that there's no stock photos on websites or assets where people shaking hands. So making sure that the stock photos are also relevant, and that messaging, the visual messaging and creative is accurate from week to week is important too.
Yeah, good point. Didn't think of that one. Interesting. Brianna, what did Hired's event strategy look like pre this time? What kind of events were you doing?
Yeah, I mean, we actually had just started to evolve our event strategy to be more account-based and more targeted prior to this all hitting. And so we had some restructuring of our team and our marketing focus, and kind of, both the budget and the spend and like the way that we were allocating and prioritizing accounts. And so right before all of this happened, we had gone through the process working with Winning by Design on prioritizing our key accounts and looking at a way that we would kind of better refine what we had already kind of started to do that was a little bit ABM-ish into actually having a more formal ABM program. And because that had all kind of happened right before this all hit, we had already gotten buy-in across the board of being more targeted and being more personalized in our approach and doing way less spray and play than we're doing now. And so I think that process had already started before this hitting, but now it's also been very, very important for us. We have definitely had some updates in our budget that we're, spending on, and making sure that we're, really spending on things that are necessary, not nice to haves, need to haves, as our VP of Finance put it. But I mean, it's been interesting seeing the pivot for us with a lot of the virtual events that we've been able to do and different plays that we've been able to employ that are, the virtual version of what we would be doing in person, like at a dinner and, a discussion that we would be having face to face. But yeah, our field marketing and events team had kind of transitioned into ABM right before this started. And so that worked out really well for us, just kind of wrapping our heads around the different approach that we're taking now, being a different iteration of, but kind of similar to a transition we were already making.
Excellent. Yeah. And I think, I know the audience that everyone's super eager to hear, kind of what are some of those great, and, I know Brianna, or you guys both have some great ideas of how what are some of those specific plays you're running virtually that have been successful for you guys in early days?
Yeah, I mean, and one of the questions Jessica just asked, what are some of the nice to haves versus need to haves? I'm getting more clarity around that from our finance team.
Mm-hmm.
One example was we had this CTO dinner that we had planned for our London audience, and it's usually at a really nice restaurant, and we have really great higher level folks in the room, CTOs, VPs of engineering, heads of engineering, directors, and some at the managerial level. But it's usually a really great event with a really great discussion and conversation over a very nice meal. So I had worked with the team on putting together a plan, which was within my usual budget that I had prior to all of this, where we were going to send everyone a bottle of wine as well as a pairing of cheese. And if they don't eat cheese, there were other options for vegan and that kind of thing. But it was going to be a really nice gift that we were going to get shipped to everyone individually to still join us over dinner virtually. And finance is like, no, that is a nice to have. That's not a need to have. You need to really drive with the content and the conversation and the people in the room and make it free. So I'm trying to get approval for something similar down the line now that we kind of have a better understanding of budgets and where we're at, and why this would drive that ROI that we might not get if we didn't have some nice gifting included. But for that particular event, we got a great group of people in the room. We had a really great discussion with both some kind of like keynote conversations with some leaders and then some breakouts, driven by that content and conversation and people in the room, not the wine and cheese that we were planning on delivering. So that was deemed a nice to have, not a need to have. And it was just an email exchange where he was like, do you know what's going on in the world? We can't be spending money like this. And I was like, all right, understood. I completely get it. So we're continuing to kind of revisit those conversations around, what makes sense right now at this time, what we can be doing to continue to make sure that we're driving pipeline and having these experiences that are having an impact on demand for the company. But we're still kind of, I guess, figuring out and navigating where we draw that line and what we're able to do with having a more frugal mindset, but also keeping in mind how important it is to engage.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm, as you guys know from working with me, I'm a big fan of that kind of value exchange idea, which is exactly what you kind of honed in on. Of like the previous value was the content and access to CTOs as well as the dinner, and then the pivot, still the content was able to draw your audience of enough value. So great example. Megan, what are you seeing in some of your customers of some examples of shifts of new plays?
Yeah, so I think I can talk about Cognite, which is a European company and in the oil and gas analytics space. And they had previously done these big events called Digital Impact Factory that were like quarterly events with customers and prospects. And what we're currently working on is moving those to Digital Impact Factory, and it actually, I think, works in their favor as they're opening up new verticals and in the power and utilities and manufacturing space. And in Europe, those verticals are very segmented, and people prefer to speak in events in their own language. And so my thought is moving to the digital space where we maybe send breakfast to people at their home or office prior to the event, send a wrap-up email afterwards so that people can connect on LinkedIn, could actually make the Digital Impact Factory more scalable and repeatable across Europe in different languages and different industries, rather than having one quarterly marquee event. But yeah, definitely seeing sort of, I'd call them like smaller production digital plays rather than these huge expensive events, and that can actually be more efficient and effective in the long run.
Awesome. Great example. Yeah, it's interesting how even though it's digital, still that regionalizing and segmentation is still so key.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, I was just going to add to that. In some ways, it can actually even be more segmented or more relevant than a broad-based event.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting advantage that some of my clients are seeing, in that, if you had, a specific, oil and gas event in an area, you weren't able to necessarily draw people globally, where now you can kind of bring people together on a common topic a little bit more easily. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think for regionalizing, something that we found interesting is we operate in 14 marketplaces. And so when we do events, we'll have an event in Denver, an event in Seattle, an event in London. Now we've been regionalizing by kind of like broader regions. So our West event, and then a version for East and a version for London, has been great because we've been able to bring together people that are in kind of like similar cities, but not necessarily having to invest in an event for every single one.
Awesome. Awesome. And Bernie, you mentioned that you guys are moving away from the larger MarTech events that you were sponsoring to these targeted plays. Maybe you can give us some examples of things that have worked for you.
Yeah, for sure. I saw a question about the engagement we're getting from virtual summits as well, and just a quick touch on that. So we participated in 2 so far, and we'll have a third one coming up in June. And it's been great to be able to share either a customer story or just a very relevant perspective on what's happening in the market. And for us, when we look at our event strategy, we think about what are the real reasons people go to an in-person event, and therefore what's the best pieces that we need to recreate virtually, and what can we maybe do without. And for us and for me as well, I think it's the knowledge exchange. So I want to hear what my peers are doing. I don't necessarily want to hear from a vendor as much, unless I'm in a buying position where now I'm great, because I get to visit them, I get to experience them. But you also, if you are in that position, you want to experience the brand that you're potentially going to purchase and be involved with on a daily, weekly basis. So when I think about knowledge share and brand, we had to make that pivot, as I was talking about, around that persona. So we usually did sell to the CMO, but really director of marketing ops would have been somebody that we would have a really great conversation with and would get to a certain level and then maybe sign off on the CMO. But now we're finding decision-making power is going straight up to the CMO, and the CMO is getting it from all angles. So we thought about our value prop for CMOs, and we designed this play that's running this kind of, I guess we're still in spring, right? Yeah, spring. It's like, it's a summer yet, it's sunny outside. So we have a CMO campaign running, which is really addressing the hard questions that are facing CMOs. So it's things like, how much pipeline can you drive with 20% less budget? Of the budget you have right now, what impact are you going to be able to drive for the business? And questions that really put them on the spot. And if they don't have that visibility into their dollars and their resources and knowledge of their growth potential, they're going to feel uncomfortable. And Allocadia's solution is something that helps them with that. So we thought, how can we help them with what they're feeling right now as a CMO? There's an awful lot of pressure. They're getting questions from their board. They're getting questions from their teams on how can you lead in a confident way forward. So we designed a play around taking components of what would have been at the live events. Like we would have had a CMO dinner, and we would have had that one-to-one experience with CMOs meetings. We translated them into a virtual experience where we obviously have the advertising campaigns going, and we have a great nurture of relevant content. And relevant is the key word there. The content that we're releasing to our CMOs has to be really relevant. How can you help me today? It's not just how the platform can help you, but give me something I can work with. And then you build that kind of exchange. So the play we're running, the offer is actually a meet and greet with our CMO, and really our CMO is Julia Stead, formerly of Invoca, and her value in the meeting is really to share what she's hearing in our peer network, what are our customers telling us, so aside from how they're actually leveraging Allocadia, but what are they telling us, and also what are our analyst partners telling us about that financial agility and replanning. So the types of insights they would have gotten at a trade show, or maybe seen or heard a customer speaking at a CMO dinner, we're offering that in a virtual way that's not heavy on sales, but really on that value exchange. And then as a token of our brand, as a thank you for their time, we are offering to make a donation to an organization called Give Directly, Project 100, where it helps families in the US that have been financially impacted by COVID. But it's very much just a thank you for your time, and it's a $100 donation in your name. But really leading with that value offer that they would have gotten that trade show season on that learning. And I think that's the piece they're going to miss, and they really need it now more than ever as they try to pivot fast and replan and have a lot of questions coming at them that they need to be able to answer.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how we take that channel away, and it seems, and I'm not denying that, there's value in that face-to-face trust and credibility building that in-person events bring. But at the end of the day, you can, to your point, Brona, I love how you're thinking about it, bringing it back to that core, and Brianna, that core content that people are really wanting to experience, and still bringing that same value, whether it be one-to-one, one-to-few, or one-to-many kind of engagements.
And then building on that too, I mean, one of the things I also think about is really putting myself in their shoes, thinking you don't have a lot of time. If anything, you're spending too much time in front of a Zoom call or any other video chat. So I think we've also really took a look at our format for these kind of meet and greets or even presentations. Like we have a CMO panel as part of that particular CMO play, with not just customers on it, but just great CMOs we know in our network who can offer real value about leading through a crisis. So, but we've cut the deck, it's very much, let's get straight to the top questions that are really, CMOs are really battling today. Let's get the perspectives of the room, and then everyone can leave feeling a little bit more empowered about what they should be doing next in their own business. So I think having creativity with the new webinar format and either giving multiple dates and times for people to tune in when it suits them best. We're really finding some fun in kind of tweaking with those kind of ideas, just so we can have short, impactful information for our customers, but also not monopolize a full hour out of their day when we know the time and resources are limited right now.
Yeah, I think also to your point about webinars, I think that our team internally was using the word webinar for literally anything we did virtually. And I had to kind of show them, there's so many different iterations of this based off of the audience and, how we're trying to engage with them. Because historically on the demand gen team, we had webinars already that, we've been doing and found success in globally for a very long time. But now we're getting together talent acquisition and recruiting managers on a weekly basis to have afternoon tea, to have a kind of like fireside chat with someone that's in recruiting that is either experiencing a slowdown or hiring freeze or still hiring business as usual, and kind of talking about how they're navigating everything. And that's like an informal chat fireside. It's not, the same approach as a webinar. That's one thing that we've been doing. And then also another thing that has been working really well with us when it comes to engagement, outside of, a Zoom situation where people are learning from some thought leaders, is we have a podcast. It's called Talk Talent to Me, and it's where our host Rob, he interviews leaders within talent acquisition to talk a little bit about their career journey, things that they're working on, kind of an informal, like getting to know you type, really great content. Opportunity. And he used to publish them on about a weekly cadence, but we found that this is a really great lever for some of our enterprise accounts and some of our key prospects that we have maybe had a more difficult time engaging with because they're super busy. It's really great to have that as a part of our toolkit to invite someone to be featured and interviewed on our podcast, because it really highlights them as a thought leader. And it's something that is really easy to do virtually and carve out a little bit of time for. So we found a lot of success in that, and then have been working closely with the sales team on, when you're, inviting someone to be a part of our podcast, maybe they haven't gotten back to any of your invitations for any of our events, or, some of the other communication that we've tried, then what does that look like after, we feature them on the podcast, then you can follow up with a really great asset for them to share that a new episode is launched on LinkedIn that they're featured in. And we've been trying to work with the team on tailoring, what that looks like and how they can leverage that tactic to find success when they might not have been getting responses otherwise.
I love what you're saying about the podcast, because we've been toying with the idea of a podcast for a long time for marketing leaders. And what I've been now talking to the demand gen team about is, with a webinar of sorts, even like this, well, there's different ways to repackage it afterwards for on demand. So I wouldn't just expect anybody to sit down and watch something for 45 minutes or an hour. So what I was talking to our demand gen manager about was, how can we package the audio of this? So really, people just want to hear the insights, and they want to be able to do it at a time that's flexible for them. So especially with work from home and children and all sorts of demands that people are facing blurred into their workday, we thought, okay, well, there's no real time that people are necessarily carving out to sit down. So let's make sure that what content we do virtually is also available in audio form, so they can listen to it when it makes sense for them, whether they're driving or they're dropping, I don't know,
on a walk, getting their steps in.
Yeah, walking around the block 2 kilometers, whatever they're doing, they actually can listen to the content in a way that makes sense to them, and they doesn't mean that they're at a desk to do it. And I think that's something else, is give them content and let them digest it in a way that makes sense while they can still make the dinner at the same time.
I love that. Yeah.
That's awesome. We're a little behind on some great questions in the chat. I just want to make sure we address too. Brianna, you mentioned that you were able to do an online event that allowed you to choose different times. Is there how does that work technically?
Wait, sorry. So would choose different.
I think you mentioned earlier that there was some program you did that allowed you to choose different times as part of the.
Yeah, we have because we have a global audience and we have all these different time zones that we're using. What we've been doing is we've been packaging different iterations of events based off of regions. So our afternoon tea that we have a West, an East, and a London version, and that's in addition to webinars that we have globally, where we try to pick a time zone friendly time. Like one of our clients, Discovery Inc., so the Discovery Channel plus all of the other things that are part of their portfolio, their team based out of London wanted to do a webinar with us for technical talent, and the time that we picked was 9 a.m. Pacific, which works for like 5 p.m. London time. That was something that we thought could be friendly for a global audience. But more frequently, we're finding that doing kind of like the same type of content and like event, but making it more regional focus has been really helpful for making sure that we're getting people at a time that makes sense for them.
Excellent. Another question to both you, Brianna and Bruno, was around kind of your MarTech stack that you're using to help you guys orchestrate this as it's moving to more digital.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let me see. So we have obviously Marketo on the marketing side. We have outreach on the sales side, which is really key for running those plays with our sales team. We use PFL for direct mail, and they've been a fantastic partner to pivot to this preferred address versus an office address for direct mail for people that are kind of making that shift now. And the other one that we've really leveraged is Vidyard. So we had Vidyard for a long time with our sales team. And when it came to cutting through the noise of the digital messaging hitting our customers, we thought, how can you really convey that empathy? And I was talking to my CMO about this, about how in our new CMO play, we have her actually speaking as a video embedded into the emails. And it sounds so simple, like everybody's seen it, but actually the engagement is far higher because there's only so much empathy and personality you convey in the written word, and people skim emails or I don't know you, delete. So we're finding that video messaging has been really great from making that executive to executive connection and getting those invitations to the right people and getting them to hear the offer on hand. And then also from our SDR team, they've been using video when we were just at the cusp of shipping a bunch of packages as the work from home policy became widespread in the US. So we had packages and we had a great sample of one. So our SDR team took it upon themselves in the last day that we had in the office to do Vidyard videos with it. And they would say, hey, like I have this package, it's got your name on it, this is for you. And it's got this offer in it. I'd love to ship it to your preferred address, or we'll get it to your office when you're back in. And at that point, it seemed like it might be a few weeks, and now it's a few months later. But yeah, definitely leveraging our Vidyard piece as well. And let me think, what else? I guess I'll have a think, Brianna. Is there anything that you're using that's different?
I mean, not anything in addition to some of the ones that you already mentioned, but we were actually in the middle of evaluating some potential like ABM specific tools right before this all happened. And so with those budget updates, we had some ideas of some of the vendors that we were interested in kind of adding to our current stack, that that's right now it's kind of like on hold of when that decision can be made and when we can make the investment. But yeah, I love hearing what other people are doing and what's been working for them, especially now virtually.
Well, Terminus actually for account-based advertising, that's actually been huge. So that one, we've been able to test a lot of messaging digitally as well. So we do quick testing, especially as the message changes, sometimes on a weekly basis. Just not drastic changes, but just pivots. So we've been using that for a lot of account-based campaigns right now as well. And obviously it has the new attribution piece to it too, which is so valuable. To see what programs are really driving that demand for you.
Megan, I know you've had, and I've heard this too, there's been a lot of demand for direct mail to kind of have that kind of in-person touch point. I think we all tried it even for this panel. Cheers, coffee.
Yes, here. Cheers.
everybody was able to get a bit of a one-on-one coffee for this panel to try to make it have a tangible aspect to it. And I love that PFL and Alice and a few others are doing this kind of ability to track to your home address without it going into your Marketo database, et cetera. Megan, what are you seeing work? I know you've run a few plays in the direct mail space.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything is sort of changing now with direct mail, and I know that some of the vendors do need lead time for direct mail. I always recommend that in the plays that the SDRs do an address verify email prior to sending it out, because we really don't know right now, where people are working from. So that's been really helpful. If you are looking to get direct mail off the ground right away, I think the either donation in a company's name is really effective, as Brona already mentioned, or some kind of, I think Alice and Sendoso do a lot of gift cards and sort of digital gifting that you can do, but I have found the actual package as sort of as labor intensive as they can be, whether you're having like a vendor do it or having your SDR team do it, it is special and memorable and surprising. And so if you can figure out how to do direct mail in this time, I think it's a little bit sensitive. People are a little bit sensitive about, getting random packages to their house. So you have to be really thoughtful about what the messaging is and how you're approaching that if you're going to be sending out packages in this time. But I think there's ways to do it.
Yeah, one of my customers is doing kind of a work from home kit as part of their SDR outreach touch point, along with outreach and Sendoso integration. And I thought it was an interesting pivot because they had been doing kind of more traditional integrated cadence sequences with the direct mail piece, but kind of understanding where people were at and making it a bit less prospecting when it was not appropriate was helpful for them.
And not everybody wants packages kind of landing to their house unexpectedly. So I think the piece that was key, and I see a question kind of coming in there about it, is having that preferred address and making it really clear on the form that this is for a one-time only send, and it's not something we're adding to our database. So you don't need to expect getting deliveries of random items unsolicited to your homes. I think that's where you kind of cross that line. So using that preferred address, or kind of saying this will be at your office when we're all back in action, which now it's just that time frame is so undetermined that almost the preferred address is actually the route that people are pivoting towards more now.
Yeah, we've leveraged, actually, we had a platform that we built specifically more for our candidates called Hired Rewards, where when a candidate gets placed with a job on Hired, we give them 100 points towards our Hired Rewards store, where they can choose to get like a backpack or something else. And if they refer someone that gets accepted onto the platform and ends up using it to find a job, they can get additional points to get like a Sonos or a Yeti cooler. And because it's point based, you get the points and then you redeem it for the prize, or a donation is also an option. And then for a while we actually had a quarterly prize draw for a red Hired Vespa. But we have been leveraging that Hired Rewards platform now for some of the gifts that we've been sending out, so we can actually send someone like, hey, really looking forward to seeing you at XYZ event. Here's 100 points that you can use towards our Hired Rewards platform. And so then they can actually redeem it and choose where they want to send it, because they're self-providing their mailing address. So that was kind of a creative thing that we had found when it comes to sending direct mail, but not really sending it to them, actually having them select something and then have it shipped to their home.
Very cool. As we're shifting back, thinking back to the virtual, I know there was a question earlier, and definitely amongst our customer base early on, as much as we're all having video conferencing fatigue, we were seeing a lot more both registration volume, signups, as well as attendee engagement pretty high compared to pre these days. But I do think, to your guys' point you mentioned earlier, I am seeing, people are getting a little video conference fatigue for just mass non-personalized events. But what are some ways, whether they be more intimate or not that we can capture some tactics that you guys are using to up the ante of making them more and more engaging. Any that come to mind?
So something that comes to my mind is I think when people can attend a session where they know they're going to get the exact question that they have in mind answered, they're more likely A, to show up, and B, to kind of keep focused on it. And what I've always found with a virtual session is there's so many distractions. You could have emails flying in, you've got Slack messages coming in. So we've actually kind of talked about asking people what's the question you want to ask this panel, and then actually confirming this will be now on the agenda. So the agenda is almost set by the people that are attending more so than what we want to share with them. And I think that way people are getting what they're looking for, and also keeping it brief too. So if I know that it's not a huge time commitment, and I can attend and get the question answered, that's win-win for me. And I think, Shari, also this kind of activity in a chat panel, I think you don't see it very often. And maybe it's just us, but it's definitely, it can be quite quiet. So really having those moderators on the ball to really get the conversation going on the chat panel as well as on the screen, I think can be really valuable.
Hey, Brona, I have a question for you. The getting the question for the agenda, is that part of the play that your SDRs are like, do you build that into the play?
We haven't yet, but it's something that's on my next iteration that I think would, like, for example, with my current CMO panel that's happening, I think that we're addressing 3 key challenges that we've heard from our customers and our network around what CMOs are really struggling with right now, leading through a crisis. And I think the next iteration would make sense to hear what our CMOs that we're inviting struggling with, and asking the panel just those questions so that they're really getting what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll double down on the conversation. The larger the group, the more important it is to have that ancillary conversation that people can feel engaged with. We had a nonprofit event for my nonprofit Women in Revenue, and we're trying to figure out how do you make an over 400 person registration engaging. And in this case, the custom Slack channel worked really well. People were so engaged and having direct dialogue on the speaker's commentary and the study we were doing. And Winning by Design often uses this approach too, to we'll have a 3-hour quarterly review, which is really hard to be engaging on, but we're all just love sharing insights across the globe on commentary on what things that are being rolled out as it's going. So definitely double down on that one. I see my colleague Lisa also using another tactic that I've seen some of my customers use, of the custom branded Zoom background as kind of an added fun element, that you can add as a tactic to just kind of stick out. Any others that you guys want to share?
Yeah, I mean, someone just mentioned, Jessica just mentioned in the chat that she was on a webinar where a poll was popped up at the end, like, during the Zoom, and we've definitely leveraged polls as a way to engage. Our afternoon teas that we've been doing with recruiting and talent acquisition folks, and the first few iterations of that, we threw up a poll in the beginning, kind of understanding what their hiring was looking like right now. Are you experiencing a slowdown, a freeze? And that actually helped with the conversation and kind of some of the things that came up during the content piece. And something that I know our team really finds a lot of value in is in-person events where you can connect with people face to face. And so we've had a few events where we've tried to create that same type of opportunity through breakout sessions in Zoom. So we'll have, kind of like a speaker kick things off with almost like a keynote type section, or, we've also had, panels, and we'll have that kind of content, and then we'll do a breakout. And then come back, do our second piece of content for the session, and then have a separate breakout where you're actually with different people. And so by the end, you've actually gotten to conversate with a number of people, and usually we'll have some sort of topic for each group, and then come back and be able to kind of share learnings and any key takeaways with the larger set of people that are attending. But we found that that's been a really great way to just kind of get to know the people in the room virtually. And something that we did for our tech talent leaders virtual meetup that we had in London recently, and that we're also going to be doing for West and East in the next month, is we sent out after a thank you page for attending via email that had everyone's headshots and LinkedIn and title and company, so everyone could connect after the fact. Because having that, interaction, I think is so, so important. And, there's so many different iterations of what these, webinar-like virtual meetups can look like. But I think that, having that opportunity to actually have conversations with other people is really, really helpful. And I think that one of the learnings that we definitely had with the breakouts is to test beforehand, because we had one session where the facilitator had a hiccup when it came to facilitating how the breakouts happen. And I was on a social Zoom yesterday where we did like a trivia with a bunch of friends, and it was really interesting how they leveraged breakouts for different teams to talk about what they thought the answer to trivia questions were. So this could also be translated to a social situation. But I think I think it's really interesting seeing the creativity that's been able to be employed through the breakout feature that Zoom has, just to have that opportunity to talk to people.
Yeah, definitely people are using webinar platforms to their fullest extent, which I definitely double down on also being really helpful to breakout rooms. Their question, which you kind of addressed just there, but any other kind of learnings besides making sure that the breakout rooms are facilitated properly that you had from leveraging breakout rooms from let's see, I think it's Jessica here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually Winning by Design was the first time that when we did our training with Winning by Design, that was the first time that I saw the breakouts happen. And I remember that moment thinking, oh, this is so cool. I love that, this is something that we can do. I think that we found that like separating or being cognizant of who you're kind of pairing together, and having a different grouping for, if there's a second breakout. We really liked having two breakouts during the full session, because then you got to meet more people. And, kind of like if you're at a dinner party and you're sitting next to the people that you're having a conversation with initially, but being able to break it up and, connect with somebody else over a drink after, having that opportunity to meet more people really made the experience really valuable for everyone. So that's something that we're going to be employing for a few of our upcoming events.
Yeah, I was surprised last week where one of our colleagues started using the reactions in Zoom, which I didn't know were there. So
I haven't seen that either.
I think they just added them actually somewhat recently, but I like them too. Yeah.
All right, everybody, how was the session today so far? Come on, let's hear it.
Use the reaction.
I'm afraid to touch anything. Just to
It disappears after a minute. So we're okay.
So funny.
Awesome. Well, yeah, we want to make sure we are going to be, as I mentioned, leveraging all of these great insights into some content to send out to you guys. So if you forgot one or two of them that are interesting, we'll definitely be shooting them out to you guys. Another question from the audience, are people seeing an increase and decrease in registration from your perspectives? And are you seeing, also attendee registration that you guys are seeing from your events?
So we're actually seeing an increase, which is wonderful. As it comes towards the summer, traditionally I've found that webinar activity went down for us. So I'm very interested to see what happens this summer. But we've actually seen an increase, but I also think a lot of that is to do with the topic. So we've been very critical on the topics that we're putting out there, and really asking ourselves, is this of value right now? And I think that's actually paying off, in addition to playing around with different times available with different lengths. So there's a few different components that we're probably testing a couple of things at the same time, which is not really best practice, but trying to give it our best shot. But we're definitely seeing an increase. And whether that continues or not, as people get a bit fatigued on the Zoom calls, we'll see. But yeah, I think you'll see an increase in registrations if you really take a hard look at the message and see, is this of value right now?
Yeah, I think the relevancy is something that has been so true for us too, because we had a webinar that was scheduled on remote work that happened to be scheduled like right at the perfect time where everybody was talking about this. And so our registration and attendance for that particular webinar was by and large, through the roof versus any previous webinars that we had done. And it was just kind of the marrying of it being the right time and the right content and the right people, and it being really, really relevant for everyone. We've also made some pivots. So we had we usually do this huge campaign around Equal Pay Day, and we have an annual data report that we release. It's our annual wage inequality in the workplace data report. And so Equal Pay Day this year was March 31st, right around the time that everyone was just, really not talking about that as much as like maybe they were before, all of this was happening. So we had a DE&I webinar that was scheduled for April 22nd, and we actually changed the messaging and the content slightly to still have a focus on that, but also through the lens of, what's currently happening right now. And so we just tweaked a little bit of the language and the copy for that to make it more relevant for this time. But our remote work webinar in particular, it was because of the content being really compelling specifically to what's happening right now. That was kind of what we found success in.
Are you guys also seeing a question from the audience, the engagement turning into pipe and op, or maybe a little too early to tell, but curious if there's any early indicators of it moving down the funnel?
I'm trying to think to have an exact example. I think for us, a lot of this happened at the end of March, April, so it's still a little early for us to see. We're definitely tracking it and keeping a close eye on it, but to make that direct correlation, we actually found from anecdotally previously before this whole COVID situation with our SDR team, though, they did say that sometimes it didn't actually matter if someone attended live or on demand. Once they got the content they were after, they were still equally as interested in a conversation. I don't know about you guys, but how often do you intend on attending something? You think that looks like a great topic, and then suddenly a meeting's popped in and you're gone. So it takes very little to not have you attend. I mean, whether it's just your mood on the day or actually a meeting. So for me, we didn't see a huge difference in whether it said anything about their intent at all. It just life happened. So I'm not seeing a huge difference on attendance versus non-attendance on pipeline. But for us, pipeline, as of these particular webinars that are doing really well, still a little early for us.
And in terms of gathering the additional registration, what kind of inbound or outbound channels are you using to drive the registration initially?
For us, we got inspired by Drift. So Drift are huge advocates of the video invite, and you won't usually see me speaking on LinkedIn in a video, but lately you will. So it's actually just trying to convey what's the value of this webinar, that a static photo and a little blurb, you just skim right past it. So we've been taking a leaf out of their book by doing a lot of video invitations. And I know for their Drift Summit that happened recently, they were saying exactly the same, that video was really working very effectively. If you can keep it short though, it needs to be like under 30 seconds. And really, what's the point in you attending? Let them know and what they're going to learn, and then hang up. So we've been using video a little more.
Interesting. Awesome. Well, that was a very lively discussion. I feel like we have a ton more amazing things to cover, but we are out of time. I want to thank Brona, you and Brianna, you guys both for joining and sharing all your tactics, and Megan for co-hosting with me. And thank you guys all for joining. It was very fun. We will share content. Thanks so much for joining, and we will share contact details if you'd like to network with us directly. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.